Welcome to MINDSHOCK True Crime. You are listening to the Psychics That Solve Cases series, and we'll be taking a look at even more psychics that have solved cases. This is episode 3 now. We'll be taking a look at a number of cases in Ireland specifically, but plenty of cases have been met with psychic involvement. And family members, police detectives have credited psychics with aiding in the investigation. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they have supernatural or paranormal powers, but they've provided intel to the investigation that has proved fruitful. Something coincidence theorists deny, and scientism cultists that pretend and hallucinate that there's 0% chance that psychics have ever solved cases, which is obviously patently false, demonstrated by all these cases credited to have been solved by psychics. Now, sometimes they're local psychics, so the connections could be dubious. They might know a local police officer. They might have gotten intel somehow. But sometimes the psychics are on another continent entirely and don't know anything about the case in pre-internet era, etc., etc. And these are quite curious cases indeed. And we go over them in typical MINDSHOCK fashion with logic and reason at the forefront without falling for logical fallacies like all these other true crime podcasts seem to do. As always, if you enjoy the podcast, find it interesting and informative and entertaining, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. You can also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube for access to exclusive streams and chats. Like and share the podcast, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Make sure you're subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications. Patrons do get a priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcast requests. You can also be a guest on the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. All right, let's continue to another case here. This is the case of Deirdre Jacob. So let's do a quick rundown of this case from Ireland. Deirdre Jacob is an Irish woman who disappeared near her home in Newbridge, County Kildare on July 28, 1998 at the age of 18. In August 2018, the Garda Síochána announced that her disappearance was being treated as a murder case. Wow, so 20 years later, it switches from a missing persons case to a murder case. At the time of her disappearance, she had completed her first year as a student teacher at St. Mary's University, Twickenham, UK. Disappearance. Deirdre was last seen about 3 p.m. July 28, 1998. She had gone to the Newbridge branch of Allied Irish Banks to get a bank draft to pay for student accommodation at the university, then went to the post office to post the bank draft. She also visited her grandmother, who owned a shop. The last sighting of her was close to her house at Barrettstown Road. At the time of her disappearance, she wore a dark t-shirt with white shoes and was carrying a black bag with a yellow Caterpillar Inc. logo. The bag has never been found. Aftermath. Deirdre's parents have never been able to move on and still hope that someone with information regarding their daughter's disappearance will come forward. They had appealed to the public for information several times over the years. In 2016, her parents said that there was not as strong a link between their daughter's disappearance and convicted rapist Larry Murphy as was often supposed. Garda were never able to place Murphy in Newbridge the day she disappeared. The only connection found was a piece of paper with Larry Murphy's name and phone number among the belongings of Deirdre's maternal grandmother after the latter's death. She had owned a shop in Newbridge, and Murphy had left his contact details with her grandmother as he was making wooden children's toys, but this was years before Deirdre's disappearance. Wow, so this convicted rapist has a job of making wooden children's toys. Okay. In July 2018, on the 20th anniversary of her disappearance, her father called for a dedicated missing persons unit to be set up. Her parents were satisfied that the Garda in Kildare were doing everything possible to locate their daughter, but that a dedicated unit would help investigations into missing persons cases. By 2018, Garda had conducted 3,200 lines of inquiry and taken 2,500 witness statements. Okay, that seems to be a pretty good investigation. Case upgraded to murder investigation. In 2018, the case was reclassified as a murder inquiry because of new information and a review of the case. Although Garda did not reveal the new information, they said there was a definite line of inquiry. In October 2018, Garda stated that they had significant new leads in the murder probe and identified Larry Murphy as a person of interest. Jacob's family still lives in Newbridge, and although they knew the reclassification of her disappearance as murder was to happen, they still found it heart-wrenching and shattering to hear the language of a murder investigation used about their daughter's disappearance. Search on Kildare-Wicklow border. In October 2021, Garda began searching woodland near Usk Little on the Kildare-Wicklow border. The search was begun after review of evidence and involved as many as 15 people from the Garda Technical Bureau, as well as a forensic archaeologist. The area is about 3 acres and the search took weeks, but they did not find any remains. However, an ancient settlement from around 500 BC was unearthed. Interesting. Okay, so let's get a little deeper here. Deirdre Jacob is part of Ireland's missing triangle area. Quite a few disappearances. Many suspected the work of a serial killer. So let's look through all of the available information here. Unresolved Mysteries, a great subreddit, has an interesting write-up here by Katie a number of years ago. Deirdre Jacob was 18 when she disappeared. She was home for the holidays from university in London and had spent the afternoon running errands on Newbridge's High Street. She visited a bank, then the post office, and called in to her grandmother's small news agent directly from across the road before she walked home. She almost made it home. The last sighting of her was outside her parents' house. She never made it to the front door, and she hasn't been seen since. 2 months after she disappeared, Garda, the Irish police force, linked her disappearance with that of 5 other women over the 5 previous years and set up Operation Trace to review these cases. They were Annie McCarrick, 26, on March 26th, 1993. Is that a coincidence? Annie was an Irish American who was studying in Dublin. She took a trip to the Wicklow Mountains, a short distance from Dublin, and has not been seen since. Jojo Doulard, 21, on November 9th, 1995. She was using a public phone box in Moon, Kildare, and was talking to her best friend when she said a lift had arrived and abruptly hung up. Fiona Pender, 25, August 23rd, 1996. Fiona was 7.5 months pregnant when she disappeared. Ciara Breen, 17, February 17th, 1997. Wow. The coincidence stack is piling on here. 2 of these missing persons disappeared on a day of the month that happened to be their age. She was 17, February 17th, 1997. She sneaked out of her house to meet someone and never returned. Fiona Synod, 19, between February 9th and 18th, 1998. So this is one a year? Huh. The single mother let the father of her child stay the night after they spent an evening with friends, and he was collected by his mother the next morning. No one saw her alive again. That sounds a little suspicious. And these aren't the only ones as part of the triangle. I'll be getting into this even further. Larry Murphy. Murphy was born February 7th, 1966, and he lived in Baltinglass, Wicklow. He was a carpenter by trade, traveling between counties Wicklow, Dublin, Kildare, and Laos for his work. In 1999, after the death of Deirdre Jacobs' grandmother, the family were sorting through her belongings when they discovered a pay stub for Larry Murphy. He had been contracted to carry out some carpentry work in her grandmother's shop around the time she disappeared. Attempted murder. On February 11th, 2000, who's Okay, so nobody went missing in 99. I'll be getting further into it. It's like almost one a year. So in 2000, an unnamed woman was walking to her car when she was accosted by a man who demanded money from her. When she refused, he punched her, breaking her nose. He made her remove her bra, which he used to bind her hands. Then he loaded her into the trunk of his car, turned the stereo up to drown out her screams, and drove away. He stopped after 12 kilometers, moved her to the front of the car, and raped her. When he was finished, he bound her hands once more. In an attempt to calm her down, he told her his name was Michael, that he was from Baltinglass in County Wicklow, but he worked in Dublin. He told her he was married and had children. He promised he would release her. Instead, he drove another 25 kilometers to a remote forest in Wicklow, dragged her deep into the trees, and raped her 3 further times. Orally, anally, and vaginally. He covered her head with a plastic bag and tried to strangle her as he shoved her back into the boot of the car, but she fought back even as he slammed the open boot on her legs. And then there were the headlights. They belonged to a car driven by a pair of deer hunters. As her attacker was stunned for a moment, she broke free and stumbled towards them, catching herself on barbed wire. The rapist ran to the driver's side, hopped in the car, and sped away, but the hunters had recognized him. What? Note, I could understand anyone being incredulous of this sheer coincidence that they could have recognized the offender. However, Ireland is a unique and wonderful place, and having spent a reasonable amount of time there during my life, I do not find this to be far-fetched at all, particularly in someone's hometown. Outside of Dublin, Ireland is like one big small town. Okay, so I guess she's alleging the population is rather small there. They took the woman to the closest Garda station, Baltinglass. The next morning, Garda officers visited the home of Larry Murphy. Though he initially claimed his innocence to his wife, he eventually pled guilty in court and was sentenced to 15 years for the rape and attempted murder of the woman. During his questioning, he made comments like, "Well, she's alive, isn't she?" and stated that she was lucky. He has never showed any signs of remorse or guilt. He has been questioned in relation to the other disappearances, but he has never provided any information. He has been acknowledged as a suspect by Garda. No one has disappeared since he has been imprisoned. That is curious. So there's at least one disappearance per year in the area until the year he's caught. He was released August 12, 2010. His release caused outrage in Ireland. Afraid of vigilantism, he initially fled to Spain, but his location was publicized in the Irish press, and he moved again to Amsterdam. Once again, footage of him going about his daily life was published, and he moved back to Spain via France. He was known to be working as a carpenter in London in 2015. Here's an article on Murphy here. dailymail.co.uk. Rapist worked in shop owned by family of Newbridge teen who vanished. By Valerie Hanley and Karen Rice, August 14, 2010. The Irish Mail on Sunday can today reveal sensational evidence linking freed rapist Larry Murphy to college student Deirdre Jacob, who disappeared in July 98. This paper has learned that Murphy, long suspected behind the disappearance of at least 3 young women, was doing work for Deirdre's grandmother in her sweet shop at the time the 18-year-old vanished from Newbridge. So I just checked the population of Newbridge in Kildare. It's over 20,000. It's not that small. Because I was about to say, if it was only, let's say, a couple hundred or even 1 or 2,000, 2016, the population was 22,742. So it does seem quite coincidental that he happens to be working. We have even more coincidences coming, but continuing here, Garda sources have revealed Murphy was carrying out carpentry work at the shop which Deirdre visited just hours before she went missing. The revelations will add fuel to the calls for better monitoring of Murphy following his release from jail for rape. The MOS has also learned that Murphy was very familiar with the area where Deirdre lived and disappeared. He once worked at a stables just half a mile from Deirdre's home, and visited Newbridge again in the weeks before the trainee teacher's disappearance to view a potential carpentry job at a local pub. Murphy also returned to the Kildare town 2 months after Deirdre went missing to carry out the work at the pub. The links to Deirdre will add weight to the clamor for a law change, which would allow Garda to monitor Murphy much more closely in the wake of his release last week, having served 10 years of his 15-year rape sentence. But wasn't it also attempted murder? I mean, shouldn't that be a lot more? I mean, that's crazy. While the prospect of a convicted rapist on the loose is alarming enough, many people, including serving and former Garda, believe Murphy may represent a far greater danger. One officer involved in his rape case and the Jacob investigation said yesterday, "It requires a certain type of callous person to do what he did. He refused to take part in any treatment in prison, and he will probably re-offend." Trainee teacher Deirdre was one of 3 women who went missing in the area before Murphy was convicted in 2000 of the abduction, rape, and attempted murder of a woman in the Wicklow Mountains. The 18-year-old was last seen as she walked towards the gateway of her Newbridge home on the afternoon of July 28, 1998. Earlier that day, she had visited her grandmother, Bridget Grady, at the shop she ran for many years in the heart of Newbridge. Deirdre dropped in on the elderly lady before and after going to the local bank and post office. She then left the shop to walk home. It is about a 25-minute walk from the town center to the bungalow Deirdre shared with her parents, Michael and Bernie, and her sister, Sierra. Her family home on the outskirts of Newbridge is concealed by tall trees, and it has been established that Deirdre never made it to the front door. Sierra is also the name of one of the other missing women. How popular of a name is Sierra in Ireland? At the time, nothing pointed to Murphy as a suspect. It was another 2 years before he was arrested after 2 hunters interrupted him as he tried to kill the woman he had abducted and raped. Deirdre's family discovered the link between them and Ireland's most notorious sex offender only after Deirdre's grandmother died. You know what else is kind of messed up? Was it only 1 count of rape? Because if he raped the woman 4 times, shouldn't that be 4 sentences for each criminal offense? And plus the attempted murder charge? I mean, how did this guy get out of prison? It's kind of crazy. Deirdre's family discovered the link between them and Ireland's most notorious sex offender only after Deirdre's grandmother died. The 94-year-old died in December 99, and it was as the family went through her possessions that they discovered Murphy's name on a check stub. A senior Garda involved in the investigation into the disappearance told the MOS Deirdre's grandmother had a shop on Newbridge Main Street, and after she died, when the family was going through her things, they found a checkbook stub with Murphy's name on it. He did carpentry work for her, but the family knew nothing about it. The grandmother hadn't told them, and the first they knew was when they found the receipt for the work at the shop. The Garda source said that, in his view, the stub added weight to the belief that Murphy was involved in Deirdre's disappearance. "No one has gone missing since Murphy was jailed," he said. "It all points to him." Garda visited Murphy at Arbor Hill Prison and questioned him twice about Deirdre. However, he refused to cooperate or even try to clear his name by giving an alibi for the day in question. The Garda source said Murphy had other links to the area. 2 years before Deirdre went missing, Larry Murphy did some work at a stables about a half-mile from her home. And he was in Newbridge before she went missing, viewing work at a local pub, but he didn't start that work until September. Between March 93 and July 98, 2 other women went missing in Leinster. They were American student Annie McCarrick, 26, and JoJo Dillard, 21. An only child, Annie had left her home in New York to study in Dublin, and she went missing in March 93 while on a trip to Johnny Fox's pub in the mountains. 2 years later, on the night of November 9th, 95, 21-year-old JoJo disappeared after making a phone call at a public phone box in Moon, Kildare County. She had missed a bus and was hitching a lift home to Callan when she went missing. Callan is in Kilkenny County. Garda have carried out extensive investigations into the disappearances, but so far have had no breakthrough in solving them. 2 years ago, the Garda brought a team of FBI agents to Ireland to review the evidence they had accumulated. These experienced profilers who specialize in investigating serial killers in the U.S. concluded that the unknown killers matched the Murphy profile. The rapist was released from Arbor Hill on Thursday and was met by a public and media frenzy. On Friday, he took the train to Cork, returning to Dublin later in the day. It is not known where he was staying. You see, it's cases like this that really make people think that vigilante justice is not inappropriate. I mean, this guy is clearly capable, willing and capable to commit these crimes. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know how many people would have a problem with a little bit more physical interrogation with this scumbag. I mean, even if he's not guilty of all these other crimes, after what he is guilty of to that one woman, I mean, a rough interrogation, I think, would be perfectly appropriate. Revealed how the woman was raped by Larry Murphy, rebuilt her life, and invited the men who saved her to her wedding. It was just after 8 p.m. Friday, February 11, 2000, when the 28-year-old locked the doors of her business and began walking the short distance to her car. As she made her way through the secluded car park, a man appeared in front of her. "Give me your money," he said. She refused, and he punched her in the face, breaking her nose and knocking her to the ground. Ordering her into the car, he demanded that she take off her bra, which he then used to tie her hands behind her back so tightly they hurt. He removed her boots and then drove her across the car park to the parking bay where his own Fiat Punto was hidden out of sight. Ignoring her desperate pleas, he bundled her into the boot of his car. "I have to because you'll start making noise," he told her. With the car stereo blaring to drown out her screams, the attacker drove 12 kilometers to a remote laneway in Beaconstown. He put her on the seat of the car, removed her trousers, took a headband in the Carlo GAA colors to gag her, and raped her. When he was finished, he dressed and told her to do the same before using her bra to tie her hands behind her back once more. Trying to calm the woman, he told her that his name was Michael and that he was from Baltinglass, but he worked in Dublin. He said he was married and even told her his children's names. He also promised to set her free. Instead, he forced her into the boot of the car before driving another 25 kilometers to Kilrenlaw, a remote forest in Wicklow County, where he parked, leaving the side lights on. At about 10:15 p.m., the rapist pulled the woman out of the boot and made her strip naked. He dragged her down a forest trail before violently raping her another 3 times. "Make love to me," he demanded, kissing her mouth as he violated her. Placing a white plastic shopping bag over her head, he told her that she would never see her family again and forced her back into the boot of his car. He began to suffocate and strangle her, but the woman kept struggling to get the bag off her head. He took the bag and stuffed it in her mouth. She felt lightheaded and struggled to breathe. But she somehow found the strength to kick and managed to get her right foot out of the boot. She kept struggling until eventually she had her 2 legs over and could feel her feet touch the ground. As she struggled, he repeatedly slammed the boot lid on her legs, leaving her writhing in pain. At one stage, I asked if he had a gun because he may as well have shot me. The pain was so bad, she said later. Suddenly, the lights of an approaching car lit up the forest. The rapist let go of the naked woman, who stumbled forward, running in blind panic into a barbed wire fence. The lights were from a car belonging to deer hunters Trevor Moody and Ken Jones. This was not their usual route. In fact, they only took it around 4 times a year. At first, they assumed that the 2 figures in the car were young lovers or people throwing out rubbish. But as the men who were carrying rifles drew near, they saw the violent struggle. Jones was just feet away from the rapist when he ran around the back of his car, jumped into the driver's seat, and sped off. In the forest of Kilrenlaw, the victim, still gripped by terror, thought she was also in danger from the 2 men who had saved her life. She initially thought they were accomplices of her attacker, but as they entangled her from the barbed wire, she realized she could trust them. They gave her a jacket and drove her to Baltinglass Garda Station. She had survived the attack, but could she now also survive its aftermath? The next morning, Garda called to the Baltinglass home of Larry Murphy. He knew why immediately. Throughout his questioning and arrest, Murphy remained calm and collected. Initially, he proclaimed his innocence to his wife Margaret before pleading guilty in court, guaranteeing himself a shorter prison sentence. The calculated, sadistic, and merciless nature of the repeated rape and attempted murder of his victim was truly shocking, but what was almost as disturbing was the fact that outwardly, Larry Murphy was the last person one would think was capable of such a vicious crime. Locals knew him as a quiet man who worked as a carpenter and had even worked on the local courthouse, and who enjoyed a few pints before going home to his family. His wife recalled that on the night of the rape he had come home and had sex with her as well. Murphy was born on February 7th, 1965 in Stratford-on-Slaney, just outside Baltinglass, one of 7 children of Lawrence and Sheila Murphy. A farm laborer, Lawrence Sr. had married his wife in June 1959, and they raised their 5 daughters and 2 sons in a modest home in the West Wicklow village. Larry did not excel academically at the national school in the town, but showed an early aptitude for woodwork. At 16, he left school, and a former woodwork teacher took him under his wing for 6 years, during which time he made wooden tableware. His other passion was hunting, a hobby which meant he was familiar with the terrain around Baltinglass and the Wicklow Mountains. And I guess is that why the other hunters knew him? Because they were all hunters? In the 90s, Murphy branched out from woodwork and started working as a carpenter and roofer, a job which took him all over Wicklow and the east of the country, which meant he was often on the road. As his business took off, he met and married Margaret, or Mags as he called her, and the pair set up home in Baltinglass. But while it appears that many knew Murphy to see, no one knew him particularly well. He was described as a loner. He stood apart, one local said. And while Murphy had not been known for threatening behavior, there were some who were unnerved by his rather bizarre demeanor. When he went to the local pubs, he gained something of a reputation for staring at women and making them feel uncomfortable. He stared at one woman in particular on a continual basis. Then, not long before the attack that would make him notorious, he attacked his wife's best friend. He was driving the woman home one night when he took her to a remote laneway and made a pass at her. When she told him she wasn't interested, he put his hands around her neck and tried to strangle her in the passenger seat of his car. She managed to escape, but he ran after her saying, "Please don't tell Mags." The woman did not report the incident to the Garda. In another disturbing episode, Murphy was in the Glen Lounge pub in Donard when he made an aggressive grab for a female customer. The incident did not escalate, but when the woman spotted Murphy again on another night out, she pointed him out to her brother and to his best friend, Trevor Moody, the same Trevor Moody who would happen upon the brutal attack on the night of February 11th, 2000. And I just looked up Donard. It's a village. It's a small village in Ireland, Wicklow. Population as of 2016, 196 people. So that makes it obviously far less coincidental. While awaiting trial in the high security wing of Clover Hill in 2000, Murphy barely spoke to any of the prison guards or inmates. His wife, who works in a supermarket, stopped visiting him in prison when he entered a guilty plea and was sentenced to 15 years. She severed all contact with him, but he continued to receive visits from his brother, Thomas, until 2005. When Thomas asked him why he did it, he replied, "I flipped." This week, Thomas went on television to state that neither he nor his sisters, 3 of whom are living in Kildare County, would give shelter to Murphy on his release and want nothing more to do with him. "I hope no other woman suffers at the hands of Larry Murphy," he said in a public denunciation, which has caused a rift with some of his other siblings who believe nothing should be said. Said to be a broken man after his son's conviction, Lawrence Murphy Sr. died soon after Larry was imprisoned. But Murphy's mother, Sheila, who is in her mid-70s and living with a daughter in Wicklow, has made a number of visits to him. In prison, an unrepentant Murphy made no friends and never spoke about his crime. But Murphy's modus operandi and his proximity to the area in which 3 women, Annie McCarrick, 26, Jojo Dillard, 21, and Deirdre Jacob, 18, went missing, presumed murdered, made him a potential suspect in their disappearance. In keeping with his secretive nature, Murphy refused to answer any questions about these investigations when questioned by detectives in prison, and no evidence was produced against him. But the manner in which he abducted, raped, and tried to kill his victim in 2000, coupled with the fact that he lived close to where these women were last seen, stoked fears he could be Ireland's first serial killer. No other women have disappeared since Murphy was imprisoned. One of the comments on this article is, "Someone put a bullet in him, please." So he's a suspect in a couple of other cases, too. There's apparently 8 total. This is known as Ireland's Vanishing Triangle. Annie McCarrick, 26 in 93. Eva Brennan, 39, 93. Imelda Keenan, 22 in 94. Jojo Dillard, 21 in 95. Fiona Pender, 25 in 96. Ciara Breen, 17 in 97. Fiona Sinat, 19 in 98. And Deirdre Jacob, 18 in 98. So that's 2 potential. The one that's 39, is she too old to meet his MO? I mean, I don't know, unless she looks really young. But that's approximately 1 per year. No other disappearances occurred while Murphy was in prison. Apparently, Murphy has been ruled out as a suspect in the Dillard and Fiona Sinat investigations. In the case of Wexford woman Fiona Sinat, it is believed that her killer was a man who was well known to her. And if he's doing exactly 1 per year, if Eva Brennan is not his victim, then it's exactly 1 per year if Fiona Sinat is not his in 98, because that was Jacob. So let's take a look at the breakdown of Ireland's Vanishing Triangle straight from Wiki. The Vanishing Triangle disappearances cases all appear to have some common characteristics. The women's ages range from late teens to late 30s. They disappeared inexplicably and suddenly, with no substantial clues or evidence of their fate has ever been found, despite large-scale searches and campaigns by the Irish police force to find them. The triangle is in the eastern part of Ireland, roughly the boundaries of Leinster. Due to similarities in the cases, a popular hypothesis is that they may be the result of a serial killer or killers being active in the area during this period. The cases of these missing women feature in the Irish media periodically, and the disappearances have been the subject in a number of unsolved crimes documentaries. The TV3 production Disappeared in the Mountains being one example. Irish police set up Operation Trace to focus on unsolved disappearances, but to date, this has failed to turn up any substantial clues as to the fate of the women, despite a 10,000 euro reward for the information resulting in the recovery of a body. The following women are usually included in the unofficial listing. Annie McCormick, 26, of Long Island, New York, went missing March 26, 1993. She was living in Sandymount, Dublin County. The last confirmed sighting of hers was at a post office in Enniskerry, Wicklow. However, there was an unconfirmed sighting of her outside Johnny Fox's pub in Glencullen in Dublin County. This sighting was by a doorman of the pub who said she was with an unknown man. They left the lounge of Johnny Fox's pub and entered the cabaret room where the unknown man paid for both of them to enter. McCarrick had invited her friend Hilary Brady and his girlfriend Rita Fortune to dinner at her apartment the next day. When McCarrick was not there, they contacted her parents in New York and she was reported missing. McCarrick's parents, John and Nancy McCarrick, arrived in Ireland shortly after their daughter was reported missing, but left after a 6-month-long unsuccessful search for McCarrick. 2. Eva Brennan, 39, of Rathgar, Dublin County, went missing July 25, 93. She was depressed prior to her disappearance. She disappeared after leaving a family lunch at her parents' house in Rathgar. Brennan's father went to her apartment because she had not come to the family home for 2 days. He rang the doorbell. He then went over to the Horse and Hound pub, which was the Brennan family owned, and asked a barman to come over, and they broke a window to get in. The jacket she had worn on the day she was last seen was there, so Brennan must have gone back to her apartment that day. There was no initial Garda investigation known to the family for around 3 months. The Brennan family have criticized the Garda on how they dealt with Brennan's disappearance. A rumor that circulated and was repeated by some Garda suggested that Eva may have known double killer Michael Brambrick, who was convicted of killing and burying Patricia McGauley and Mary Cummins in Clondalkin, Dublin. Brennan's sister, Colette McCann, said it was extremely unlikely she would have known Bambrick and had not, to anyone's knowledge, been to Clondalkin or the South Inner City where Bambrick originally came from. She said her sister visited her parents' home every day, had lunch there, and returned to her apartment and rarely went out. The experience of the Brennan family is not dissimilar to the family of Marilyn Rynn, who disappeared shortly before Christmas in 95 and was later revealed to have been murdered between December 26th and January 7th, 1996, by David Lawler. Wow, the popo in this area does not inspire confidence. 3. Imelda Keenan, 22, of Mount Mellick, Laos County, went missing on January 3rd, 94. She was living in Waterford County. She had initially gone to stay with one of her brothers in Cobb, Cork County, but left after a short while when she went to stay with 2 other brothers in Waterford City. She was living with her boyfriend, Mark Wall. They both lived in an apartment in the town on William Street. Keenan attended the Central Technical Institute in Waterford, where she undertook a computer course for a short period. Keenan told Wall that she was going to the post office. Keenan left the apartment 1:30 p.m., walked down William Street onto Lombard Street. The last confirmed sighting of Keenan is at this time when she was seen crossing the road by a local doctor's secretary who knew her well. The secretary and a friend observed Keenan crossing the road at the corner of the Tower Hotel and Lombard Street. She was never seen again. 4. Josephine Jojo Dillard, 21, of Callan County, Kilkenny, went missing on November 9, 1995. She was living in Harold's Cross, Dublin County. She had recently dropped out of a beauty therapy course after finding it very difficult to juggle work and college. On the day she disappeared, she was planning on moving home to Callan. Is that a coincidence? She had missed her bus home to Callan and had to take a bus to Naas, Kildare County instead. She disappeared in the Moon area of Kildare. She was hitchhiking home from Dublin to Kilkenny. She had been driven from the Dublin area to Kilcullen in Kildare County and then taken from Kilcullen to Moon. She was last seen using a payphone, and through telephone records, police found that the call was made at 11:37 p.m. to Dillard's friend Mary Cullinan. She ended the call as she was about to enter another car. There was also an unconfirmed sighting of her walking along the road to Castle Dermot, Kildare County. The driver of the car has never been identified. Wow. Okay. 5. Fiona Pender, 25, of Tullamore County, Offaly, went missing August 23rd, 96. She was last seen leaving her apartment by boyfriend John Thompson. Pender was 7 months pregnant at the time of her disappearance. In 2008, a small wooden cross bearing the name Fiona Pender was found on the Slieve Bloom Way at the border between Laos and Offaly, which led to the belief that Fiona was buried in the Slieve Bloom Mountains. So that's interesting. So would a serial killer take the trouble to make a small wooden cross and put her name on it? Or was that a friend or family member who just, that was their way of grieving, and it has actually, they have no idea where she is or what happened to her, and that was just something they did? Unclear. 6. Ciara Breen, 17, of Dundalk, Louth County, went missing February 13th, 1997. She was last seen by her mother, Bernadette, who said at the time they had both gone to bed just after midnight. After 2 a.m., Bernadette got up to go to the toilet and discovered she was missing. She had left a window on the latch, and it is believed that she did so that she could climb back in. In 2014, 2 credible witnesses came forward with sightings of Ciara from the night she disappeared, and in 2015, a man in his 50s was arrested but released without charge. Wow, some interesting developments in that case so many years later. Here's an interesting article from the Irish Mirror, February 20th, 2022, pretty recent here. Mystery letters could be key to finding out what happened to Louth teen missing since 97. A former top cop believes the disappearance of teenager Ciara Breen could finally be solved if the author of 2 anonymous letters comes forward. Retired Detective Inspector Pat Mary said he believes that the person who sent them to the Garda in 2013 and 2014 could hold the key to finding Ciara's body. The 17-year-old vanished on February 13, 1997 after sneaking out of her house in Dundalk, Louth County, and is feared dead. The retired detective inspector said he believes the author of the letters was a close associate of the prime suspect in the case who died 4 years ago. Mr. Mary, who re-examined the case in 2010, told the Irish Sunday Mirror, "We did receive 2 anonymous letters. It's said that we should talk to him, the prime suspect, about it, that he knows something about her disappearance. The person might very well know more. There are certain people who do know more. If the person who wrote the letter was to come forward, they might have some knowledge which may lead to where Ciara's remains are." I took up the investigation in 2010 and put it together and took a different viewpoint on it and was able to come up with more evidence. The prime suspect in Ciara's disappearance died suddenly of a suspected drug overdose while in Garda custody on another matter in 2017. He had been arrested twice on suspicion of murdering the teen, once in 1999 and again in 2015. But on both occasions, the DPP decided not to file charges. Mr. Mary said he believed this man was at one stage close to confessing. He said he almost admitted it to us. When we arrested a second time and we were interviewing him and he was crying his eyes out and he was down on his knees and just about to pop and tell us, and his solicitor came in. He got a second wind and then said nothing to us. Mr. Mary, who also led the investigation into Rachel O'Reilly's murder and the probe into the fatal shooting of Detective Garda Adrian Donahoe, said he would like to see all 17 acres of Balmer's Bog searched. The investigation team carried out a dig of just over 2 acres of land there in 2015 and unearthed a floral dress he believes belonged to the missing teen. He continued, "There were 17 acres of bog, but we only had money to do 2.5 acres. I believe her body is in there somewhere. We had an anthropologist on our dig, and the bog had been full of drains, and we believe she was in one of the drains. But when we went digging and discovered someone had filled the drain in with rubble to try and build up the bog, we kept going anyway." So apparently, now it's I guess it hasn't been released, the exact details of what these anonymous letters said, but apparently this is weird because they were onto this guy in 99. So the Irish Sun in 2017, they named this guy Liam Mullen. I don't know why they didn't put his name in the more recent articles, but this is the Irish Sun, published July 8th, 2017 by Stephen Breen. Killing suspect dies in custody. Man repeatedly linked to the disappearance of teenager Ciara Breen dies in Dundalk Garda Station. Was it really an overdose, or did some officers just take the law into their own hands, so to speak, if they truly believed he did it? Liam Mullen, the chief suspect for the 97 Dundalk murder, overdosed following his drunk driving arrest this week. The chief suspect for the murder of missing Ciara Breen has died after being nabbed for a road offense. Liam Mullen, who had long been linked to the case, was arrested on suspicion of drunk driving Thursday night. The Irish Sun has learned after being taken into custody he swallowed what is believed to have been a bag of heroin and took ill. Despite the efforts of a doctor in the Garda station, Mullen passed away a short time later. The Dundalk man was arrested twice over Ciara's disappearance, in 99 and 2 years ago after Garda received fresh information, but was never charged. It is believed he even admitted several times to killing the 17-year-old. A source close to the investigation explained Mullen made a number of drunken confessions to the crime on various occasions over the years, but always retracted it when he'd sobered up. Ciara was last seen at her home in Bachelor's Walk in Dundalk in the early hours of February 13th, 1997. In an emotional appeal for information, her mother, Bernadette, later told RTE, "I had just one little girl, my heart, my soul, my world, And just like that, she was gone. She was not streetwise, and she paid the price. Garda believes she was murdered on the night she vanished, but have never found her remains. Friends claimed that Mullen, who was almost twice her age, had approached Ciara in a chipper, and they made arrangements to meet after dark. But he repeatedly denied the conversation ever took place. And that is very, very sad. So apparently apparently this would not be part of a serial killer if it was just this one drunken guy who was never linked to anything else and apparently confessed. 7 on the list, Fiona Sinnott, 19, of Rossler, Wexford County. Went missing February 8th, 98. She was living in Broadway, Wexford County. Fiona was last seen leaving Butler's Pub in Broadway. She left the pub with her ex-boyfriend and father to her 11-month-old daughter, Sean Carroll. During his conversation with investigators, Carroll told them that he had walked Sinnott back to her house in Ballyhead, Wexford, and that he had spent the night sleeping on her couch. Sinnott, who had been complaining of pains in her arms and upper body, had gone straight to bed, and that the next morning, Monday, February 9th, Carroll said that he walked into Sinnott's bedroom and saw that she was awake. According to Carroll, Sinnott had told him that she was still in pain and that she had intended on hitching a lift to her physician later that day. Because Sinnott said that she had no money, Carroll told Garda that he had given her £3. He then left the house and took a lift from his mother, who was waiting in a car outside. Carroll and his mother then drove back to their family home, which was where Sinnott and Carroll's daughter Emma had been staying at the time. Sinnott was never seen again. During the investigation into Sinnott's disappearance, it was discovered that she did not see a doctor that day. There were no records of her having visited any of the surgeries in the vicinity. The investigation also failed to find any evidence that she had been thumbing for a lift. During a technical examination of Sinnott's house, Garda noticed that it had been stripped bare of a number of her personal belongings. According to a retired detective, Alan Bailey, there was a complete absence of clothing and other personal items, indicating that a teenage girl and her 11-month-old daughter were actually living there. Later, locals would report they had seen a number of black refuse bags outside of the property. As news of Sinnott's disappearance continued to spread, a local farmer approached Garda with news that he had discovered a number of black bags in the corner of one of his fields. Inside, he had found a number of items and documents that had Sinnott's name written on them. Unfortunately, the farmer had set fire to the bags, as he initially thought this was just another case of illegal dumping. It wasn't until news of Sinnott's disappearance reached him that he realized how significant they were. At this point, the investigators began to suspect that someone was trying to mislead them into thinking that Sinnott had run away. On September 12, 2008, a memorial plaque for Sinnott was stolen from a cemetery in Our Lady's Island in Wexford. The marble plaque, which had been cemented into the wall, was removed the night before it was due to be unveiled. Wow, that is really weird. This is quite a bizarre case. In an article from the Independent.ie, there's an interesting article here, February 9th, 2022, by Pydrag Byrne. We won't give up. Family of missing Fiona Sinnott renew appeals for info 24 years on. It's kind of weird. They're saying, so was she last seen at the pub? Or at her house, if they don't believe the ex-boyfriend and the father of her child. I feel that something really tragic happened that night, Diane said. She was in a place where she walked out of the pub, and she wouldn't have gotten on a bus or train. The pub is in the middle of nowhere. We do believe that people in Wexford have information. It is really hard knowing that she is still out there. We would love closure. We want to put her to rest. At the time she went missing, Fiona was just 19 and had an 11-month-old baby girl now grown up. She was in the process of planning a birthday party for her daughter and was looking forward to Diane's 21st at the end of the month. Diane is her sister. On the night she went missing, between midnight and 12:30 a.m. on February 9th, at Kisha Cross Junction, a man and a woman were seen having a dispute or argument. Two other men in their late teens or early 20s were also standing nearby. These people have never been identified, and Garda are still seeking to talk to them all these years on. That's curious. Yeah, I'm not quite understanding. They don't believe the boyfriend that they made it home? The ex-boyfriend? Irish Mirror, November 15th, 2020. Two fresh digs for missing Irish woman Fiona Sinout planned after new information emerges. Exclusive, her devastated family believes she may have been killed on the night she disappeared and buried in a shallow grave nearby. So they're not believing the story. They're not believing Sean Carroll's story that they walked back to her house. He spent the night sleeping on her couch, and that he saw her in the morning, and then he left and gave her money. Very specific amount, £3, not 4, 5, or 10. Okay, continuing this article here. Two fresh digs for missing Fiona Sinout are planned after her family received new information about where she could be buried. The mother of one has not been seen since leaving Butler's Pub in Broadway, Wexford, on February 9, 1998. She was treated as a missing person before her case was upgraded to murder in 2005. All those years later. Her devastated family, who have never given up searching for her, believe she may have been killed on the night she disappeared and buried in a shallow grave nearby. Her sister Diane said Fiona, who would have turned 42 last month, was a devoted mother to daughter Emma and would have never left her. She revealed they received credible information from the public about land that should be searched in the coming weeks. Speaking exclusively of the Irish Sunday Mirror from her home in Bridgeton, Wexford, Diane said, "We have received a few tip-offs in recent weeks, and there are 2 areas of land now which we want to search. One is a field where cement was put down around the time Fiona disappeared. We are in constant contact with the guards, and we are hoping the searches will happen soon. Logistics need to be sorted out first, but they are actively looking into these areas, and we are confident that it will be looked into very soon. We follow up on any tip-offs and appreciate the public's help. We will never give up searching for Fiona." Diane said there is no way she would have walked out on her young daughter, and therefore they believe something sinister happened to her. She continued, "Fiona was 19 years old, and she had an 11-month-old baby, and she went out on a quiet night to Butler's, and that was the last anyone has ever seen of her. We were always a very close family, but Fiona and I grew up together and were so close as there was only a year between us. Coming up to her disappearance, she was looking forward to going on a shopping trip to Waterford for my 21st and stuff for her daughter's first birthday, which was the day after my 21st. So we do think she came to a tragic end that night. She didn't just walk out on her family. She loved her daughter and was proud as punch of her. Emma was getting to the stage where she was starting to stand up on her feet, and Fiona said it would be no time before she was running around the place. She absolutely doted over Emma. Garda said in the past, a motorist saw a male and female on the road near Kisha Cross, Broadway, at around midnight on the night Fiona disappeared. There were also 2 males in the late teens or early 20s seen in close proximity. None of these people have ever come forward, and Garda are anxious to trace them or anyone who was in the area at the time. Officers have conducted 459 inquiries and taken 355 statements to date in the case. Diane added, "We believe that there are people that know what happened. It's not like she walked out from a pub onto a busy street and took a bus or train. In Butler's 20-odd years ago, you wouldn't get a taxi from there. Anyone who was in the pub that night would have known each other." Diane said her mother Mary can no longer go for walks around the area Fiona disappeared as it's too upsetting. Her father Pat died in 2004, aged 59, with a broken heart, and her sister Caroline died in 2017, age 47. Diane added, "My mother used to love going down to Ladies Island to do the Pilgrim Walk every year, as she is a churchgoer, and now she can't go anywhere near it because she feels very gloomy going down there, and that's outside her own doorstep. It's around that area that Fiona disappeared, so the area is just not the same to her anymore." Diane said that the passage of time has only made things harder for her family. She appealed for anyone with information about Fiona, who she described as being lovely and bubbly, to come forward and end their heartache. She said the family just wants her home, and anyone who has any bit of information, regardless of how small, we ask them to come forward. There is also a 20,000 euro reward for any information that helps bring her home. As time goes by, it gets worse. It's 10 times harder for us now than when she first disappeared. It's knowing that she's out there buried somewhere, and our family believes she could be right under our noses, too. She added, we would like to thank the locals and public for all their help. They have been so helpful and supportive. Her family are hoping a new podcast, which is due for release in coming weeks, will also help jog people's memories. Okay, I mean, this seems like it would be a good idea to do some kind of radar searches, and it also doesn't say what those 2 tips were. So were they anonymous tips? I mean, I still don't understand what the deal with the boyfriend is. So that's a suspicious story if they believe she really disappeared the night of. Did the boyfriend or the guilty parties see? How could the guilty, unless they're saying after the boyfriend left, whose convenient alibi is his mother, he left, somebody else broke into her house, kidnapped and or killed her, then packed up all her stuff, put it in garbage bags, and then what? Left the garbage bags abandoned somewhere? That doesn't seem like a good plan, because if they're trying to frame it as if she left, why would she leave her own stuff in garbage bags? Unless she was mad at somebody and packed up her own stuff and was planning to leave and someone stopped her from leaving, and her bags were left wherever, just dumped. Is that a possibility? I'm going to go over one more write-up here on WexfordHub.com, the disappearance of Fiona Sinnott, February 5th, 2015. It was Sunday, February 8th, 98. The song Dr. Jones by Aqua was at the top of the singles charts, and the movie Titanic was smashing box office records. The Winter Olympics had started in Japan, and news about a devastating earthquake in Afghanistan was receiving worldwide media attention. Locally, the Wexford People paper was reporting on the concerns of Wexford-based poultry farmers who were worried about the spread of the Newcastle virus, a contagious disease that had already wiped out over 1 million birds in Northern Ireland. Broadway. In the small village of Broadway, County Wexford, mother of one, Fiona Sinnott, was sitting with her friends in a local pub called Butler's. According to the book Missing Presumed, by retired Detective Sergeant Alan Bailey, the 19-year-old spent the evening chatting and joking with her friends about a night out they had enjoyed the previous Friday. Fiona's ex-partner, Sean Carroll, was also at the pub. However, he was sitting at the bar alone, smoking and having a pint. At some point in the evening, Fiona called her brother and asked him to join her and her friends at Butler's. However, he declined her invitation because he had just returned home from work. When the night came to a close, Fiona said goodbye to her friends and left to take the short walk back to the house that she had been renting by herself in Ballyhit. At 12:10 a.m., she left the bar clutching 2 packets of peanuts in her hand. Carol, who was the father of their 11-month-old daughter, decided to accompany her home. This was the last time that Fiona was seen in public. Little did her friends know that they would never see her again. Reported missing. It wasn't until February 18th, 98 that Fiona was reported missing. Wow, 10 days? That's crazy. 10 days. You see, Fiona was a very independent young woman. In the past, she had previously left home to visit Cork for a couple days. You also have to take into account the fact that she lived 16 kilometers away from her family home, and that mobile phones were uncommon at the time. Before the rise of the handheld device, communication occurred through landline phones, written correspondence, and face-to-face conversations. Because of this, it was common for family members not to have contact with one another for a number of days. Every Friday, Fiona would get a bus into Wexford town so that she could meet up with her family for coffee. When she failed to show up for the second week in a row, her family began to worry. As the days went by, it began to dawn on everyone that something was wrong. On the 18th of February, Fiona's father sounded the alarm when he contacted the Kilmore Garda station to inform them that his daughter had not been seen in public since the 8th. In response, a full-scale missing persons investigation was launched. See, what about her friends, though? This makes me a little bit suspicious of the friends that she was out with as well, because they didn't report her missing. I mean, unless we don't know how often she socialized with them, but according to them, they had been out the previous Friday. So how many days would go by? I mean, this is all kind of weird. Sean Carroll. In his book, Missing Presumed, Bailey tells us how Garda contacted Fiona's ex-boyfriend after she had been reported missing. And also, what about him? How often does he see the mother of his child? He doesn't even, I mean, that's kind of weird. Because Fiona Sinnott and Sean Carroll had left Butler's pub during the same time frame, it was obvious that he would become one of the first people to be contacted by Garda. During his conversation with investigators, Carroll told them that he had walked Fiona back to her house in Ballyhit and he had spent the night sleeping on her couch. Fiona, who had been complaining about pains in her arm and upper body, had gone straight to bed. In the morning, Carroll said that he walked into Fiona's bedroom and saw that she was awake. According to Carroll, Fiona had told him she was still in pain and that she intended on hitching a lift to her GP later that day. Because Fiona said she had no money, Carroll told Garda that he had given her £3. He then left the house and took a lift from his mother, who was waiting in a car outside. Carroll and his mother then drove back to their family home, which was where Fiona's daughter Emma had been staying at the time. That was the last date that anyone would report seeing Fiona alive. Why didn't they give her a ride to the doctor? Especially if she has no money. During the investigation into Fiona Sinnott's disappearance, it was discovered that she did not see a doctor that day. There were no record of her having attended her GP in Broadway. The investigation also failed to find any evidence that she had been thumbing for a lift. A theory that she had left the country with a Welsh trucker was ruled out. 2 nights before Fiona disappeared, she had spent the night with a trucker in his cab. Although the idea of a large truck driving down the narrow roads of Ballyhit was met with skepticism, Garda still had to pursue it. After Garda made contact with the trucker in question, he agreed to return to Ireland so that he could be interviewed. His alibi checked out, and he was able to prove to investigators that he had been driving on the continent when Fiona went missing. During a technical examination of Fiona's house, Garda noticed that it had been stripped bare of a number of her personal belongings. It was spotlessly clean, which was considered to be unusual for Fiona. So wait a second. So if it wasn't just her stuff that was taken, if the whole place was completely cleaned thoroughly, I mean, that would lead one to think that she might have been harmed in the house. According to retired Detective Sergeant Alan Bailey, who served as a national coordinator for the Specialist Garda Task Force Operation Trace, there was a complete absence of clothing and other personal items indicating that a teenage girl and her 11-month-old daughter were actually living there. Later, one local would recall how he had seen over a dozen black refuse bags, I'm guessing garbage bags, lined up outside of the property. What the heck? Black bags. As news of Fiona's disappearance continued to spread, a local farmer approached Garda with news that he had discovered a number of black bags in the corner of one of his fields. Inside the bags, he had a number of items and documents that had Fiona's name written on them. Unfortunately, the farmer had set fire to the bags as he thought it was just another case of illegal dumping. The correspondence that he discovered had George's Street written on them, which was where Fiona had previously rented an apartment with her ex-boyfriend. This address did not correspond with the address that was being listed in the missing persons appeals. It was at this point in the investigation that Garda began to suspect that somebody was trying to mislead them into thinking that Fiona had run away. The search. At the time of the disappearance, Fiona's daughter Emma was about to celebrate her first birthday. According to her family and friends, Fiona was looking forward to this, as well as her sister's upcoming 21st birthday. She even had plans to go to Waterford so that she could buy her sister a birthday present. All of this lends credence to the widely held belief that Fiona did not decide to run away. Since day one, detectives have been convinced that Fiona's body is buried somewhere in the south of County Wexford. Fiona's family are also of the same opinion. I believe she's not far. She's closer than what we might think. You could be driving by her on the road all the time. In June 98, the nearby lake in Ladies Island was drained, with Garda keeping a 24-hour floodlit watch. The operation lasted a month and the entire lake was searched. However, no trace of Fiona was found. Searches at other lakes suggested burial sites also failed to turn up anything. In 2001, a man that was suspected of having been involved in the disposal of Fiona's body died from a suspected drug overdose. Wait, is this the same? No. According to Bailey's book, Missing Presumed, the man in question had been finding it increasingly difficult to live with the guilt of having been involved. However, he could not provide the Angarda Siochana with an anonymous tip-off because only 3 people knew about the exact location of her whereabouts. Telling somebody, he said, would be tantamount to signing his own death warrant. Wait, what? This is information I haven't seen before. On September 16th, 2005, Garda announced they were now treating the case as a murder investigation. Earlier that day, around 7 a.m., the prime suspect in the murder of Fiona Sinott was arrested at his home and detained under Section 4 of the Criminal Justice Act. In the days leading up to his arrest, 5 other people had been detained by Garda on suspicion of withholding information. Over the course of 3 days, 6 people in total were arrested. The prime suspect, the suspect's mother, his sister's boyfriend, his ex-girlfriend, and a male friend. After questioning, they were released, and files outlining their suspected involvement in Fiona's disappearance were submitted to the Director of Public Prosecutions. In the end, no charges were filed. Wait, is this the ex-boyfriend? I guess they're not releasing any names, because it says the suspect and his mother. It also says that the suspect died from a suspected drug overdose. Huh. The arrests came on the back of vital information that Garda received from a woman that was known to the suspect. Mill Pond Cross. During the investigation, one person came forward to say that they heard a woman screaming in the Mill Pond Cross area on the night that Fiona had left Butler's pub. Another motorist stated that they had seen a couple who appeared to be arguing with one another at the entrance of a quarry. These reports have never been proven, nor have they ever been successfully linked to Fiona's disappearance. There is a firmly held belief that a number of people in the Wexford area know what happened to Fiona. According to Bailey, there have been persistent rumors that local youths were involved in the cover-up of her murder. Reports have also suggested that people have maintained their silence because they fear the suspect in question. Other info: serial killer. Fiona's case is often mentioned whenever the topic of Ireland's Vanishing Triangle is brought up. The term itself refers to the disappearances of a number of women during the 90s, all of which occurred in the same geographical region in Ireland. These include Fiona Sinott, Fiona Pender, 2 Fionas, Anna McCarrick, Eva Brennan, Imelda Keenan, Jojo Dollard, Ciara Breen, and Deirdre Jacob. It has been theorized that a serial killer may have been involved in some of the disappearances. However, the suspect in Fiona's case is a man that was well known to her. Recommendations. In Bailey's book, he recalls how Operation Trace made a number of recommendations to Wexford Garda. These recommendations outlined what actions should be taken against those involved in Fiona's case. In the mid-2000s, it came to light that these recommendations were never implemented. Previous assaults. After her disappearance, it came to light that Fiona had suffered a number of brutal assaults at the hands of an ex-boyfriend. So is this not the ex-boyfriend that's the father of her child? On more than one occasion, she was hospitalized as a result of these attacks. However, Fiona discharged herself and did not press charges. The first time that she was brought to Wexford General Hospital, it was because she had suffered bruising to her face. On another occasion, she had bite marks on her legs and had been beaten around the head and back. In '96, Garda were called to a house close to Rossler Harbor. When they arrived on the scene, Garda found Fiona being comforted on the street by another woman. Inside the house, they came across the man who had allegedly threatened her with a knife. He had been drinking and was asleep on the couch. What? See, they're not naming any people, so we don't know if this is all the same guy. Fiona collected her belongings and left. No charges were pressed. Collected her belongings and left. Garda also heard details of another brutal assault, which Fiona had told a number of people about. According to Garda, it was a very serious attack that would have seen the perpetrator facing up to life in prison. The Sinott family have been unsuccessful in their attempts to make contact with Fiona's daughter, Emma, who is now in her 20s, remained in the care of her father's family after Fiona disappeared. Wow. Well, that's kind of messed up. Somebody knows something. In an interview with Irish Examiner, Fiona's family expressed their belief that 2 people besides the main suspect had information about her whereabouts. However, these people were believed to be fearful of him. They also expressed their belief that Fiona's body is somewhere in County Wexford. The weather that night. Small details like the weather may seem insignificant. However, the rain and temperature can all play a huge part in the decisions we make. There is also the small and hopeful chance that these kind of details will jog someone's memory of that Sunday. On Sunday, February 8, 98, BBC weatherman John Ketley started his forecast by pointing out how exceptionally mild it was going to be. Quote, "We are really going to see a taste of spring throughout the British Isles with temperatures way above where they ought to be for this time of year," end quote. That February had started off cold. However, by Sunday the 8th, the weather had started to change for the better. According to historical data from the Wexford Wildlife Reserve, Saturday the 7th had seen minimum temperatures of 2.8 degrees Celsius. By Monday the 9th, those minimum temperatures had risen to 9.6 degrees Celsius. As Ketley pointed out in his forecast, there were strong southwesterly winds gusting up from the Atlantic that week. These winds would have been stronger than usual, and there is a chance they may have influenced what route Fiona decided to take home. If Fiona took the southerly route home, she would have been walking against these strong winds. However, if she took the northerly route, as her family believed she did, then the wind would have been behind her for most of the journey. Very interesting. Fiona's father passes away. Sadly, Fiona's father, Pat, passed away in 2004, having never discovered what had happened to his daughter. His family say he died of a broken heart. Before his death, he used to wait at the front gate in the hope that she would one day return. On his deathbed, he told his sons, "Don't stop searching for her. Find her." Spat at. In January 2006, the Sunday Mirror reported that Fiona's family were spat at by a man during the search for her body. The man in question also laughed at her grieving relatives as they awaited the results of the dig. The operation had been carried out at a field in Kilnick. I'm assuming they identified this guy? Was this guy just some kind of drunken loon? I mean, was he not prosecuted for assault? Spitting on people is not legal. That's your DNA on somebody else's body. I mean, there's no names here. I'm assuming this can't be this couldn't have been the father of the child or possibly even the ex-boyfriend. So what's the rumor here? That there were youths that were responsible? So were these non-affiliated with the father of her child? I mean, there's so many suspect things here, like the father of her child and their family not even allowing Fiona's family to see their granddaughter or their niece for the brothers and the sister. I mean, none of this makes any sense. I mean, this case is just flat out mind-shocking. And, I mean, to me, the number one thing that stands out, we need to know how often her friends that she was at the pub with, how often do they socialize with her? Because if they socialize with her every few days or at least talk to her, there's not a peep for 10 days and they never say anything or report her missing. I mean, you have to put them as the number one suspects, possibly with the father of her child, or even without, even if we remove him from the equation. Of course, FBI statistics would indicate that he is not suspect number one. But even if let's say he's innocent, just for the sake of argument, who are the friends? Why did they not report her missing? Do they just never contact her? I mean, the information that we have suggests that they do, because they were either with her that previous Friday or from the weekend before. Either way, I mean, 10 days, that's a long time. Or did she tell them she was going on a trip and then something happened? I mean, that would be an innocent explanation. Psychic. July 2006, Garda carried out a search of a lane outside of St. David's Church in Mulrankin. The search, which failed to find anything, came after the site was identified by a clairvoyant. The clairvoyant had stated that Fiona was bludgeoned to death and that her body was buried under a septic tank. A human skull was found in Ket's Strand in 2007. However, investigators soon learned that the skull belonged to an older and smaller woman. Stolen memorial plaque. September 12, 2008, a memorial plaque for Fiona was stolen from a cemetery in Our Lady's Island in County Wexford. The marble plaque, which had been cemented into the wall, was removed the night before it was due to be unveiled. In his book, retired Detective Sergeant Alan Bailey states that it was almost certainly the case that the suspect in Fiona's disappearance was somehow involved with the removal of the plaque. So if this is someone who just hates Fiona and her memory and has no regard for being caught, is this the same guy that spat at the family and laughed laughed at them during the search. I mean, this guy's brazen if that's the case. I mean, I don't know what to make of that. Digs. In April 2015, what was believed to be human hair was discovered at a dig site in County Wexford. DNA testing would later disprove this. In August of 2015, Fiona's family revealed that they had ID'd 2 sites in the southeast, and they were awaiting on the go-ahead from Operation Trace to search them. These digs have been carried out with the help of Joe Blake from Trace Missing Persons Ireland, who uses specially trained cadaver dogs to search for forensic evidence in human remains. So, assuming nothing was found. Chief suspect complicates future extradition bids. In December 2017, the Irish Sun reported that the chief suspect in Fiona's murder had fled to another country in an attempt to complicate any future extradition bids. The newspaper reported that the suspect had been previously living in the UK and in Spain, and that he had recently moved to another country. The newspaper did not name the country that he had moved to. Wait a second. This can't be the same guy as before from the other cases. Larry Murphy. I mean, how would he have known her? And was he placed in the area here? She was also beaten by her ex-boyfriend, I'm assuming not the father of her child, the previous ex, or was it the father of her child? I mean, there's so much that doesn't make any sense here in this case. Okay, so I wasn't able to find that much more other than on Reddit, where it was stated that the family does believe he killed the mother of his child. So it was the most recent ex-boyfriend. And if this is the same guy that had beaten her before, now what connection does he have with these youths that are afraid of him? And does that explain why there's no contact between that side of the family and the daughter? Very, very sad. I mean, this case really needs to get solved. If they did have him in custody, and is this why in all these articles there's no reference of his story because it was discounted? And so if they had him in custody at one point, and his associates, if this story is true about some kind of argument and there was some kind of fight, and possibly there were friends, were her friends also the friends of her ex? And did they cover for him either because they were scared of him or because they were friends with him? And even if they weren't friends with him, if they knew what he was capable of and he somehow threatened them to the point where they were too scared to do anything about it, does that check all the boxes? I mean, it seems like it does. All right, let's continue here to, of course, Deirdre Jacob, who we already went over. So Eva Brennan and Fiona Pender have been linked to the murders of Antoinette Smith and Patricia Doherty. Smith, a 27-year-old separated mother of 2, went missing in July 1987. Her body was discovered the following June in a shallow grave at Killarkey in the foothills of the Dublin Mountains. Doherty, age 34, disappeared while shopping December 23, 1991. In June 1992, her remains were found by men digging turf in the same area of the Dublin Mountains. Although it is possible that a serial killer may have been involved in some of the disappearances, the suspect in Fiona Synod's case is a man who is well known to her. Renewed interest in 2012, so we're talking about the Irish vanishing triangle as a whole now. The disappearances came to an end by 2000. But in late October 2012, there was renewed interest in the unofficial list of missing women when news broke of a 30-year-old pregnant Laois woman named Aofe Phelan, who had inexplicably disappeared as she walked home from a house of a friend. Her remains were later found, and a 24-year-old man who was known to her has been charged with her murder. He is too young to have been connected with the other cases, which occurred when he would have been aged 5 to 10. Possible explanations and suspects. It is widely suspected that at least some, if not all, of the disappearances were due to a possible serial killer acting either alone or with an accomplice in the Leinster area in the 90s. Irish police have often claimed that Larry Murphy, a native of Baltinglass, a village well within the triangle, is the main suspect in at least some of the cases. Murphy was convicted and imprisoned in 2001 for the rape and attempted murder of a Carlow businesswoman in 2000. He was attempting to strangle her in a wooded area of Wicklow Mountains at night when he was surprised by two hunters who happened upon the scene and intervened, saving the woman. Larry Murphy has maintained that he is unconnected with the disappearances and has been questioned on the cases on numerous occasions by police. To date, there is no solid evidence connecting Murphy with the disappearances. It is widely known, though, that Murphy, a carpenter, had completed work in a shop owned by Miss Jacobs's grandmother. Okay, so what is the most likely outcome here? Let's not fall for false dichotomies. Is it possible Larry Murphy is responsible for some of the disappearances, but not all? And that's, I guess, would anybody be surprised if that were the case? Now, Garda did release CCTV footage of Deirdre Jacob from the day she disappeared in 98. Apparently, this was many years later, though, which is kind of weird because why wouldn't they release it immediately? All right, so some final thoughts here. Unresolved Mysteries, Vanishing Triangle, Ireland's Great Mystery by Kyle 8414, 5 years ago. He basically laid these cases out again. The other thing that's kind of strange is that Deirdre Jacob was spotted yards away from her parents' driveway. Passing motorist witnessed Jacob approaching within yards of her. See, if we really want to go down the conspiracy theorist rabbit hole, did she make it to her parents' home and then something else happened? But let's look at some analysis here from Astrolab. I've been thinking about this ever since it became a thing because I live in Ireland and I would have been roughly the same age as some of the women at the time they vanished. I often look up the individual cases to see if there's any news about them. I have a couple thoughts on the Vanishing Triangle if you're interested. Even though it's a small area, many women went missing there over the space of a few years, I don't think any of them are connected. A police task force was set up called Operation Trace to examine the cases of 6 women, but they could establish no connection between any of the missing 6 women. I have read everything I can get my hands on over the past 10 years or so, and this is what I believe happened to each. Annie McCarrick, American woman first to vanish in the Dublin Mountains. It's now believed a disgraced member of the IRA met and killed her opportunistically. He had been banished from Northern Ireland by his fellow IRA men for child abuse. Whilst drunk, he had confessed to a friend that he killed Annie, and apparently the Garda believed the account, as he corroborates certain details. However, he lives abroad now and has never been charged. No name is available. Jojo Dillard disappeared while hitchhiking at nighttime, was at a phone booth and ended the call abruptly, telling her friend a car had pulled up to give her a lift. I don't know the identity of the suspect, but her sister says she knows who did it and it's not Larry Murphy. Huh. Here's an article, Irish Mirror. Family of missing Jojo Dillard claim her killer has been protected for over 20 years by political connections. A senior Garda told Mary and her husband Martin at a meeting in 96 that officers knew the identity of the man who abducted, raped, and killed Jojo. By Mick Garrickle. This is March 2017. The devastated family of missing Jojo Dillard claim her killer has been protected for more than 2 decades because of his strong political connections. The 20-year-old Kilkenny woman disappeared without a trace in 95, but now her sister, Mary Phelan, has told for the first time how she believes Garda and prominent politicians at the time conspired to ensure her murderer never faced justice. As a state probe into a smear campaign against Garda whistleblowers begins, she claims some officers waged a similar blackening of Jojo's name to lessen public sympathy with her case. A senior Garda told Mary and her husband Martin at a meeting in 96 officers knew the identity of the man who abducted, raped, and killed Jojo. He was able to give disturbing details of how the psycho disposed of her body, saying she was wrapped in plastic and buried 10 feet underground using a digger. But he also told them the investigation won't go anywhere. Jojo's family believed he was telling the truth, but was later warned to toe the official line that the case was being fully investigated. They also alleged Garda engaged in a smear campaign just like they did to Maurice McCabe to quieten the public interest in the case. Described by her family as a quiet girl who held down several part-time jobs and had been studying beauty therapy, Mary insists Officers painted her in a bad light, even leaking details of an abortion. They said all kinds of horrible things about Jo. They said she was drinking, taking drugs. They drove her down to dirt. I'll never get over the smear campaign. Jo was a lovely girl, a quiet girl. She didn't deserve that. The abortion, was her own personal thing. Destroying her reputation was what they did to make people stop looking for her, to stop asking questions, to make it go away. Why would that work, though? I mean, even if all the made up stories were true, how does that mean she deserves to be killed and no justice? I mean, it's kind of weird. Mary thought long and hard before bringing medical notes on the procedure to Garda, but was desperate to do everything to help find her. She added they swore on the Bible it would be kept confidential, but then they went and told a newspaper. That was nothing to do with her death. It was a conscious attempt to stop me pushing JoJo's case. Smearing her was to stop me speaking out. Man, that's a scumbag move. On the night she disappeared, JoJo missed the last bus home from Dublin to Kilkenny. She took one as far as Naas and from there planned to hitchhike. A man who came forward to Garda and was never considered a suspect gave her a lift to Kilcullen. Another driver then dropped her off in a phone box in Moon, Kildare County. At this point, she called her friend and flatmate in Callan, Kilkenny County, Mary Cullinan, and told her that she would call her from the next stop before telling her a car had pulled up. It was the last anyone had heard from her. Later, Garda claimed a witness dubbed the 999 Girl came forward and said she traveled in the car with JoJo as far as Carlowtown before she got out at a set of traffic lights, with JoJo continuing her journey with two men. 2 years later, the woman came to Mary saying she was the 999 Girl. She apologized for lying, insisting she never saw JoJo, and Garda had told her to make the false claim. Mary said, I just told her it was okay. What else I was going to say? She told me she wasn't well at the time and was frequently in the Garda station, so they knew her. She claims officers made this vulnerable woman pretend she was with JoJo, who was still alive when they traveled as far as Carlow, to take the focus of the investigation out of the area where the body is buried. The 999 Girl approached Mary at the unveiling of a monument in JoJo's memory at the site where the phone box in Moon stood. A short time after her disappearance, it was decided to remove the phone box. Mary's husband, Martin, said it was the last place we know JoJo was, and they tore it down. You usually leave flowers at the side of the road when a person is killed in a crash. They couldn't even let us have that. A women's group in Kerry donated a monument in her memory. Martin added, we had to fight hard just to be allowed to put that up. He explained that when they arrived to dig the foundation to insert the small stone memorial, 2 council workers were there to stop it. But eventually they got their way, and the memorial was erected in 1998. JoJo's family insists Garda were desperate to take the focus off the South Kildare-Wicklow area. Martin said they were trying to push us down into Carlow, where they knew we wouldn't find anything. Mary later met a government minister to push for more to be done to help find JoJo's remains. That minister told the family they had a report from Garda which stated everything possible was being done. Martin added, we then asked if the army could be brought in too, and the minister replied in a sarcastic manner, where shall I send them? To Cork? We have to have a specific area. We mentioned searching the Wicklow Mountains, but the minister said army men could be lost as it is boggy. I felt at the time, what have we an army for? Wait a second. The minister is saying that the army men would get lost because it's boggy. Wow. Eventually, a search was sanctioned, but the families say they were not told about it beforehand because they would have objected that the focus was on the wrong area. They insist the farmland in Wicklow is where they believe her body remains, was given just a cursory glance. The couple, who are now retired from farming, say they will spend every day until the end fighting to get justice for Jo. They have led a long campaign for the setting up of a dedicated missing persons unit. Last month, they retained Belfast human rights experts KRW Law to represent them in a legal challenge for a fresh probe into JoJo's disappearance and the handling of the criminal investigation at the time. With the launch of the Charlton inquiry, the family believes people are beginning to take claims of corruption seriously. They are now appealing to the retired Garda, who may have information about an effort to cover up her death, to blow the whistle. Last week, they also met Sinn Féin MEP Lynn Boylan, who has vowed to support their campaign. In a statement responding to claims of Garda malpractice surrounding the case, the force's press office said, "This is an active investigation, and as such, we will not be commenting. We are still appealing for anyone with information to come forward and contact Garda. If anyone has a complaint regarding an investigation, they should contact the Garda Síochána Ombudsman Commission." See, there needs to be like an independent international commission that oversees these agencies, because if there's internal corruption, how would that ever be brought to light? See, yeah, this is all kind of weird. But continuing Astrolab's post here. So, yeah, they believe that it's a politically connected individual, so that's not Larry Murphy either. Fiona Pender, she was 7 months pregnant when she disappeared from her home in the town center. Her then-boyfriend, John Thompson, is believed to have killed and buried her. He lives in Canada now and recently made the news when his latest partner told police that he admitted killing Fiona and threatened to do the same to her. Wow, it looks like the boyfriends or ex-boyfriends really here are responsible for most of these cases. Yeah, there's really not a lot of information on the Fiona Pender case. Fiona Sinat, young mother who went missing after an argument with her ex-partner one night. Though he has never been named as a suspect, it is widely known that he's the only suspect in the case, and he is believed to have killed the mother of his child after a fight. Certain members of his family also believe this, according to newspaper interviews. Ciara Breen, the 17-year-old, vanished after leaving home to meet an older man one night. It is believed that this man killed her, but that is not Larry Murphy. Deirdre Jacob, I don't know about the radio interview with her mother. That was the only one where I thought Murphy might be involved. There was a connection. It was discovered he had previously done carpentry work on his grandmother's shop, which was one of the last places she visited before she vanished. He may have seen and stalked her. Also, in relation to Deirdre Jacob, a fellow inmate of Larry Murphy claims Murphy confessed to him, giving very specific details about the crime. This was taken seriously by the Garda because the details mirrored those previously given by an alleged psychic whose information had not yet been made public at that stage. And this is why we're here, and we even started this investigation into the Vanishing Triangle of Ireland, was because of psychics that have information that has not been made public. And I'll be circling back to that, but let's finish the write-up here. What I've always found strange is that women had previously vanished and been found murdered in unsolved crimes across Ireland and have since. There have been others within the triangle whose cases were not included in it. Some examples of other missing or murdered women are Eva Brennan, Dublin, Imelda Keenan, Waterford, Sandra Collins, Sligo, all missing, and Reynald Murray, Dublin, Sophie Toscan du Plantier, Cork, Irene White, Dublin, Mary Kilmartin, Laos, Antoinette Smith, Dublin, Patricia Doherty, Dublin, Elaine O'Hara, Dublin, all murdered. Somebody has been convicted for that last one only, but I just think it's odd that none of these cases were ever talked about in connection to the Vanishing Six. Well, they actually were. A great book to read about the Vanishing Triangle and many of the women I mentioned is Missing by journalist Barry Cummins. Although it was written several years ago, it's a good place to read about the disappearances because there haven't been many developments in any of them in several years anyway. Although it's tempting to suspect Larry Murphy for at least some of these crimes, I don't think he's involved with most, if any, of them. People speculated that he had raped and killed before he was convicted for the rape and attempted murder of a woman and confessed to those charges. People then suspected him of other murders. But in my opinion, that case was opportunistic. He ambushed and attacked the woman using her own bra to tie her up. He drove her in her own car to the Dublin Mountains, where he tried to suffocate her with plastic bags he found in the boot of her car. No freshly dug grave was found when Garda searched the areas where the crime took place. There are the signs of somebody who was unprepared and who made do with whatever tools came to hand as he went along. Because of the lack of grave, I speculate that he had not even decided what to do with the body afterwards. Larry Murphy's crimes were appalling beyond belief, and it was such a blessing that some poachers happened upon the scene in the remote area as he was trying to kill that woman. But I don't think it has any of the hallmarks of an experienced killer. Rather, it seems like somebody who has perhaps raped women before, but not actually killed yet. Just my thoughts. I hope I didn't bore you too much. Of course, we have the psychic issue, but we'll get to that in a moment. User since deleted posted this. Damn, that is a lot of women in a not very large area. Just on Deirdre Jacobs, I actually think at your front door is likely to be an optimal spot for someone to grab a victim. You're maybe concealed by a fence or a hedge from the road, you're distracted looking for keys, you're away from the field of streetlights. Fairly easy for someone to lie in and grab you. And Miss Jacobs' mother was interviewed on the Ray Darcy show saying that they knew Miss Jacobs' killer and that it wasn't Larry Murphy. Suggests to me that maybe it was somebody known to the family. Surely you wouldn't hold on to that information if you thought it was a serial killer. A response here, there are a few options for the remark. 1, she could provide an alibi for Murphy. 2, she saw the murder happen but doesn't know the murderer's name. 3, she was the killer herself. 4, she's protecting the killer, the most likely is. 5, she doesn't actually know, she just has an opinion and can prove absolutely nothing. That is kind of a weird thing to say, that they know it's not Larry Murphy. I mean, how coincidental is it that he worked for the grandmother and at another area close by? I mean, that's kind of crazy. Wow, this is just a crazy post. Similarly, in the Sierra Breen case, Sierra's mother said she knows who killed her daughter and that she still sees him around the area, which must be gut-wrenching. Here's the thing. Ireland's small, so generally when anything happens in an area, people in that area know who's responsible, and in some instances that includes the Garda. The problem is that there is no evidence, and obviously you can't convict someone on hearsay. Okay, so let's get to the psychic information here. This is a post on a forum. I don't know, it was copy pasted. I don't know the original source here. There's a case here in Ireland of a missing woman from Newbridge. The 18-year-old disappeared in broad daylight, yards from her house on a relatively busy road. No trace of her has ever been found. Her name is Deirdre Jacob. Many people, including the Garda police, believe that she is a victim of convict Larry Murphy, who was later jailed for the torture and attempted murder of another young woman. The psychic bit. An apparent psychic contacted the Garda and gave them details of what had happened. A man in a car had pulled over under the pretense of asking the girl for directions. He had strewn children's toys around the seats of the car in order to make himself look wholesome, a gentle dad, a family-oriented sort of guy. The psychic said that he had dragged the girl into the car and subsequently killed her, and that her body was in a lake. Understandably, this psychic's claim was not made public at the time, but for some reason the Garda considered it to have some credibility, so they questioned Murphy in prison about it. He refused to speak to them, but when they spoke to a fellow inmate of his, the inmate allegedly told them there in prison Murphy had admitted killing Deirdre. He said that Murphy followed the girl home, and as she was about to go in her gate, he pulled over and asked for directions. He had strewn kids' toys about the car in order to make himself look like a trustworthy father and not a serial killer. As the girl leaned nearer, he knocked her out and put her in the car. When she came around, she was having convulsions of some sort, and he beat her to death with a hammer and disposed of her body in a lake. Later, when the psychic story leaked and people got wind of the inmate's allegations, it seemed to give credence to the psychic's information. I just thought I'd give this example because the detail about the toys was very specific and unusual. I'm not saying I believe it, but it really makes me think that some psychics might actually be genuine, although most seem not. This is questionable, as the mother said in an interview that she knows the killer, and it's not Murphy. Curious. Very, very curious. I know that was a bit of a long aside, but it had to be done. It had to be done because this is MindShock, and of course, all of those people deserve closure and justice as well. So that's it for today, and again, believe it or not, there's many, many more cases credited to have been solved or assisted in some fashion by so-called psychic detectives. Feel free to chime in on your thoughts, theories, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind in the comment section. Also, if you enjoy the podcast, want to help support MindShock, help us get more mind-shocking content out there, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. You can also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Like and share the podcast, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcast requests. You can also be a guest in the podcast depending on your tier. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.